A Course in Miracles. Text. Chapter 7. The Consistency of the Kingdom. Section 5. The Recognition of Truth. God's meaning waits in the kingdom because that is where He placed it. It does not wait in time. It merely rests in the kingdom because it belongs there, as you do. How can you who are God's meaning perceive yourselves as absent from it? You can see yourselves as separated from your meaning only by experiencing yourself as unreal. This is why the ego is insane. It teaches that you are not what you are. This is so contradictory that it is clearly impossible. It is therefore a lesson which you cannot really learn, and therefore cannot really teach. Yet you are always teaching. You must therefore be teaching something else as well, even though the ego does not know what it is. The ego then is always being undone, and does suspect your motives. Your mind cannot be unified in allegiance to the ego because the mind does not belong to it. Yet what is treacherous to the ego is faithful to peace. The ego's enemy is therefore your friend. We said before that the ego's friend is not part of you, since the ego perceives itself as at war and therefore in need of allies. You who are not at war must look for brothers and recognize all whom you see as brothers, because only equals are at peace. Because God's equal sons have everything, they cannot compete. Yet if they perceive any of their brothers as anything other than their perfect equals, the idea of competition has entered their minds. Do not underestimate your need to be vigilant against this idea, because all your conflicts come from it. It is the belief that conflicting interests are possible, and therefore you have accepted the impossible as true. How is that different from saying that you are perceiving yourself as unreal? To be in the kingdom is merely to focus your full attention on it. As long as you believe that you can attend to what is not true, you are accepting conflict as your choice. Is it really a choice? It seems to be, but seeming and reality are hardly the same. You who are the kingdom are not concerned with seeming. Reality is yours because you are reality. This is how having and being are ultimately reconciled, not in the kingdom, but in your minds. The altar there is the only reality. The altar is perfectly clear in thought, because it is a reflection of perfect thought. It sees only brothers because it sees only in its own light. God has lit your minds Himself and keeps your minds lit by His light, because His light is what your minds are. This is totally beyond question, and when you questioned it, you were answered. The answer merely undoes the question by establishing the fact that to question reality is to question meaninglessly. That is why the Holy Spirit never questions. His sole function is to undo the questionable and thus lead to certainty. The certain are perfectly calm because they are not in doubt. They do not raise questions because nothing questionable enters their minds. This holds them in perfect serenity because this is what they share, knowing what they are. As has so often been said, healing is both an art and a science. It is an art because it depends on inspiration in the sense that we have already used the term. Inspiration is the opposite of dispiriting and therefore means to make joyous. The dispirited are depressed because they believe that they are literally without the Spirit, which is an illusion. You do not put the Spirit in them by inspiring them, because that would be magic and therefore would not be real healing. You do, however, recognize the Spirit that is already there, and thereby reawaken it. This is why the healer is part of the resurrection and the life. The Spirit is not asleep in the minds of the sick, but the part of the mind that can perceive it and be glad is. Healing is also a science because it obeys the laws of God, whose laws are true. Because they are true, they are perfectly dependable and therefore universal in application. The real aim of science is neither prediction nor control, but only understanding. This is because it does not establish the laws it seeks, cannot discover them through prediction, and has no control over them at all. Science is nothing more than an approach to what already is. Like inspiration, it can be misunderstood as magic and will be whenever it is undertaken as separate from what already is and perceived as a means for establishing it. To believe this is possible is to believe you can do it. This can only be the voice of the ego. Truth can only be recognized and need only be recognized. Inspiration is of the Spirit, and certainty is of God according to His laws. Both, therefore, come from the same source, because inspiration comes from the voice for God, and certainty comes from the laws of God. Healing does not come directly from God, who knows His creations as perfectly whole. Yet healing is nevertheless of God, because it proceeds from His voice and from His laws. It is their result in a state of mind which does not know Him. The state is unknown to Him, and therefore does not exist, but those who sleep are stupefied, or better, unaware, and because they are unaware, they do not know. The Holy Spirit must work through you to teach you He is in you. This is an intermediary step toward the knowledge that you are in God, because you are part of Him. The miracles which the Holy Spirit inspires can have no order of difficulty, because every part of creation is of one order. This is God's will and yours. The laws of God establish this, and the Holy Spirit reminds you of it. When you heal, you are remembering the laws of God and forgetting the laws of the ego. We said before that forgetting is merely a way of remembering better. It is therefore not the opposite of remembering when it is properly perceived. Perceived improperly, it induces a perception of conflict with something else, as all incorrect perception does. Properly perceived, it can be used as a way out of conflict, as all proper perception can. All abilities, then, should be given over to the Holy Spirit, who knows how to use them properly. He can use them only for healing, because He knows you only as whole. By healing, you learn of wholeness, and by learning of wholeness, you learn to remember God. You have forgotten Him, but the Holy Spirit still knows that your forgetting must be translated into a way of remembering and not perceived as a separate ability which opposes an opposite. That is the way in which the ego tries to use all abilities, since its goal is always to make you believe that you are in opposition. The ego's goal is as unified as the Holy Spirit, and it is because of this that their goals can never be reconciled in any way or to any extent. The ego always seeks to divide and separate. The Holy Spirit always seeks to unify and heal. As you heal, you are healed, because the Holy Spirit sees no order of healing. Healing is the way to undo the belief in differences, being the only way of perceiving the sonship without this belief. This perception is therefore in accord with the laws of God, even in a state of mind which is out of accord with His. The strength of right perception is so great that it brings the mind into accord with His, because it yields to His pull, which is in all of you. To oppose the pull or the will of God is not an ability, but a real delusion. The ego believes that it has this ability and can offer it to you as a gift. You do not want it. It is not a gift. It is nothing at all. God has given you a gift which you both have and are. When you do not use it, you do not know you have it. By not knowing this, you do not know what you are. Healing, then, is a way of approaching knowledge by thinking in accordance with the laws of God and recognizing their universality. Without this recognition, you have made the laws themselves meaningless to you. Yet the laws are not meaningless, since all meaning is contained by them and in them. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, because that is where the laws of God operate truly, and they can operate only truly, since they are the laws of truth. But seek this only because you can find nothing else. There is nothing else. God is all in a very literal sense. All being is in Him, who is all being. You are therefore in Him, since your being is His. Healing is a way of forgetting the sense of danger the ego has induced in you by not recognizing its existence in your brothers. This strengthens the Holy Spirit in both of you because it is a refusal to acknowledge fear. Love needs only this invitation. It comes freely to all the sonship, being what the sonship is. By your awakening to it, you are merely forgetting what you are not. This enables you to remember what you are.